This video is going to be different from what I normally do. For one, it's going to be longer than usual, so fair warning. But secondly, it's going to be more exegetical. So if you like looking at things like the original language, the Hebrew in this case, then stick around because you're going to like this. If you don't like that kind of stuff, watch anyway. You might end up liking it. Hey, what's up? It's your bro, Mario Escobedo, here to add value to your spiritual growth. Remember to like and share this video and also leave a comment. What I want to share with you today is based on Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, a very well-known verse, and especially right now during the holiday season. I'm recording this in December of 2017. This is a verse that you're going to hear taught a lot. You're going to hear a lot of sermons about it. And I want to present it to you in a way that's maybe a little bit different from what you've normally heard. And I want to look at some specific words in the Hebrew, in the original language in which the Old Testament was written, that might give this particular verse a different meaning than what you've normally heard. Now, I'm only going to look at two portions of Isaiah 9:6, but I think they're pretty powerful. So first of all, let me read Isaiah 9:6 to you. Again, you're probably familiar with this verse, but just in case you're not, let me read Isaiah 9:6 to you. I'm alternating between the camera and my computer screen, so this is how it reads. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Now, we take this as a prophecy foretelling the birth of Jesus Christ. And so the prophet Isaiah gives four specific titles or attributes or characteristics that would characterize the ministry and the life of Jesus Christ. And I'm only going to look at two of these four titles or characteristics. I'm going to look at the first two, Wonderful Counselor and Mighty God. And what I want to do is I want to look at the specific Hebrew words that are used in these titles to delve a bit more deeply into the meaning of these words. So what I have on the screen is side by side the NIV, the English version, but also on the right-hand side, I've got the Hebrew text so that I could point out some things from the Hebrew text. So interestingly enough, in the Hebrew text, what we have is Isaiah chapter 9, verse 5. That's what it is in the Hebrew text. But in the English text, it's Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. That happens a lot, pretty frequently actually in the Hebrew Bible, especially in the book of Psalms, where the verses that we have in English don't line up exactly with the Hebrew text. And there's a whole bunch of different reasons for that. It's not necessary to go into them right now, but just know that on the Hebrew text, I'm looking at verse 5, but it's verse 6 in the English text. Now, if we look at this, the first half of the verse talks about the birth of the child. And so right here, starting at the first verse with this word ki yelet yulad lanu, for to us a child is born, bein netan lanu, vatihi, is that right? Yeah, vatihi, hamisra, al shikmo. So all that is that first part of the verse. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and it will be on his shoulders the dominion or the authority. The second part of the verse where Isaiah starts talking about the titles or the characteristics of this child that's going to be born starts right here in the Hebrew text. Now remember, Hebrew is read from right to left, okay? So it starts right here with this word right here. We pronounce that vayikra, and that means, and he will be called, or he will call. So you have right here, vayikra shemo, and you will call, or he will call his name. And then here's where we get into the titles with this word right here. Let me go ahead and double click that. Well, that brought up something I didn't want, but nonetheless, this word right here, pele. So that's the first word in the titles that Isaiah uses for this child that's going to be born. That first word is pele, and then yoetz. So this first word is how we typically translate wonderful or marvelous. This second word, yoetz, is counselor. So you put these two together and you have Wonderful Counselor. Now, I fully understand that you could actually translate this verse this way. Wonderful, comma, Counselor, meaning two different titles. Or you could translate it as we typically do, Wonderful Counselor, as one title. And so for the purposes of this video, I'm translating it as one title, not two separate ones, but one title. Pele Yoetz. Wonderful Counselor. Now, here's what's really interesting about this particular title. So when you hear Wonderful Counselor, we think of the word wonderful, and it's something to be admired, right? It's something beautiful. Wow, it's wonderful. It's a great thing. And so typically when we think about Wonderful Counselor in the passage that we're considering and in the birth of Jesus, we just talk about, well, him being a wonderful counselor. But pay close attention to the word that I'm pointing out here, the word Pele, which, yes, can be translated as wonderful. But here's what's interesting. This word isn't used a whole lot in the Old Testament. I think I counted about 15 times, more or less, where this word and its derivatives are used in the Old Testament. But 9 times out of 10, this word Pele refers to something miraculous. It refers to something supernatural. It refers to something that exceeds expectations. More often than not, again, it refers to something miraculous. So let me give you an example. In Exodus chapter, Exodus chapter 15, you have the Song of Moses after the children of Israel crossed the Red Sea on dry land, and then the waters came back over the army of the Pharaoh. Well, in Exodus chapter 15, Moses and the people of Israel sing this song, and they talk about that event as being something Pele, something miraculous, something supernatural and out of the ordinary. So when you think about the word Pele, wonderful or marvelous, in the context of Isaiah, and then you take into consideration how that word is used in the context of the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible, I think it takes on a different meaning. This is how I interpret Pele Yoetz, wonderful or marvelous counselor. I think it's meant to convey this kind of idea that God is a type of counselor that counsels you in such a way that takes you to the miraculous. He just doesn't give you good counsel, something that'll help you get by, something that'll help you just kind of survive a little bit. No. The type of counsel that God gives, the type of counselor that God is that he counsels in such a way that the result far exceeds your expectations. The result of following God's counsel is something miraculous. He is that type of a counselor. He is a counselor who gives miraculous results, not just let's get by, let's get through this type of results, but he is a miraculous counselor, meaning that he gives you wisdom when you're encountering a difficult situation where you have to make a decision and the decision isn't all that clear to you. When you follow the counsel of this Pele Yoetz, this wonderful, this marvelous counselor, then what you are going to end up with is something that far exceeds your expectations. In fact, it will be something miraculous because that's the type of counsel that God offers. So when we talk about Pele Yoetz, and specifically that word Pele, it refers to something that exceeds your expectations, something miraculous and supernatural. So your expectations may be about right here with any given situation or with a given decision that you have to make. You may be expecting this to happen. But with Pele, we're talking about something that exceeds your expectations. It's far above your expectations. And I love what that means in the context of God dealing with his people and Jesus, as this prophecy is foretelling the birth of Jesus, how Jesus will deal with his people. He will counsel them. He will guide them in such a way that leads to miraculous, supernatural, beyond your expectation type of results. And I like that. I love that idea. I think it goes beyond simply, oh, he's a wonderful counselor. He's beautiful. He's wonderful. He's there to counsel. You know, it's much more than that. And that word right there, Pele, I think Isaiah uses it very intentionally to get us to understand that the type of counsel God gives, or this child that will be born will give, is miraculous in nature and will provide miraculous results. Pele Yoetz. So if you're confronting a situation that requires a decision, and it's one of those tough decisions that can have life-affecting, life-altering impact and consequences, trust in this Pele Yoetz, this wonderful counselor, because his counsel will not only lead you to the right decision, but it will take you to miraculous results that exceed your expectations. So that's the first title I want to look at. The second title is right after it, and it's how we translate Mighty God. And if you see it right here in the Hebrew text, here it is. It's El That's the word for God, generic, just a general title for God, El Gibor. And that word Gibor is the word that we translate as mighty or as strong. Now, there's nothing wrong with that translation. That is a very appropriate translation of the word Gibor, strong. But here's what I've discovered, that the word Gibor, yes, it refers to strength, but it refers to a particular kind of strength. Typically, when you use the word Gibor, you're talking about strength as exercised in a military context. So let me give you an example. I'm going to go back to my screen here. I'm looking at 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 18, and this is the context here is that they're looking for somebody. Saul's consultants are looking for somebody to help Saul when this evil spirit comes and torments him. Look at what the reply is. This is when they're trying to propose David as the person to help Saul out. 1 Samuel 16:18. One of the servants answered, I have seen a son of Jesse of Bethlehem who knows how to play the lyre. He is a brave man and a warrior. I'm going to stop right there. There's more in the verse, but I'm going to stop right there. That word warrior is the word Gibor. It's the same word that is used of the child that is going to be born that Isaiah references in Isaiah 9, verse 6, this Gibor. So when we use the word Gibor, we're not talking about just some strong God. That type of perception of a strong God, there's a different word in the Hebrew for that. There's a different, very common word that's translated strong, and that's the word chazak. That's the typical word for something strong. In fact, God in multiple occasions is referred to as being chazak. But even mankind, a human, can be chazak. He can be strong. But in this case, in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, it's not the word chazak that's used to describe what type of God or what type of God is, or what this child is going to exemplify in his characteristics. The word that is used is Gibor. And so in my mind, it immediately lends itself to a military context, not just a strong God. When we think about a strong God or a mighty God, the perception can be similar to what a young child sees their father as, meaning strong. My daddy is strong. My daddy has big muscles. My daddy can lift heavy things. When we look at the word mighty God or strong God, that could be the perception that we have of God. But that's not what Isaiah is communicating here. He is saying he is El Gibor. He is a strong God with the idea, the overtones of it being in a military context. What does this mean to me? How do I interpret that El Gibor? Well, I interpret it this way, that he is a God who fights your battles. He is a God who is victorious. In fact, that word Gibor many times in the Old Testament is translated hero, military hero. You saw how it was used in 1 Samuel 16:18 to refer to David as a warrior, right? That's the typical use of that word Gibor. Again, strong or mighty is an appropriate translation, but it usually is used in a military context. It's referred or it's used of some individual who has really demonstrated a strength on the battlefield. This is the type of God that Isaiah is describing, or this is the type of child that Isaiah is describing. El Gibor, a military, a warrior God, a God who fights. He's not just strong. He just doesn't have big muscles just to show off how big his muscles are. It's not that kind of strength. No, it's strength in a military context. It's strength in battle. It's a victorious type of strength. He's demonstrated his ability to be victorious in battle. That's the kind of Gibor. That's the kind of strength that Isaiah is referring to when he says that this child will be called El Gibor. He is a strong God in the context of military battle. What does that mean? God can fight your battles. When there are battles that come against you, God will fight those battles and he will be victorious. In fact, the Old Testament makes clear that God has never lost a battle, that he is a mighty warrior. That's one of the major themes that pops up in the prophets, in the Old Testament in general, that God is a man of war. He is victorious in every battle, never been defeated. And this is the context. This is the word that Isaiah uses to describe the birth of this child and the characteristics of this child. El Gibor, mighty in battle. He's not just strong, he's strong in battle. He just doesn't protect you, he protects you with victory and with decisiveness. So when you're encountering situations that require God's protection, think about what this passage means, what Jesus embodies. That Isaiah was looking forward to the birth of Jesus, but he wasn't looking at this fragile, vulnerable, weak child that was born in a manger. No, when he saw that child, he saw El Gibor. He saw a victorious, conquering God. And what we know is that Jesus Christ was victorious over what mattered the most. He conquered death, hell, and the grave. El Gibor. He was victorious. He was that mighty warrior who was able to conquer death, hell, and the grave. That's the kind of child that Isaiah is describing, and that was fulfilled at the birth of Jesus Christ. So when you put these two together, now there are two other characteristics or titles that are given to this child: Avi Ad, Eternal Father, and Sar Shalom, Prince of Peace. I'm not going to go into those, but just with those two that we saw, Pele Yoetz, Wonderful Counselor, and El Gibor, I think those two are just wonderful attributes of our God and of our Messiah, Jesus Christ, that we can trust in him, that when things get tough and we have tough decisions to make, he is our counselor that leads us to miraculous results. And when we find ourselves in difficult situations, especially in spiritual attacks, he is El Gibor. He is that mighty warrior God who fights for us and protects us and is victorious. I can imagine the prophet Isaiah seeing even further than the birth of the Messiah, the birth of Jesus. I can imagine the prophet Isaiah seeing further into the future to the triumphant victory of Jesus Christ over death, hell, and the grave, and even further than that, his triumphant return for his body, for his bride. El Gibor, victorious in absolutely everything. When I see this, here's what I think about, that when Jesus Christ was born, he provided everything that you and I need to live a life of victory. And just looking at these two titles, this Pele Yoetz, Wonderful Counselor, Supernatural, Miraculous Counselor, and El Gibor, just think about just those two characteristics. There are two others, but just those two. Think about what they mean for your life as a follower of Jesus Christ. That you have this counselor who will take you to miraculous things. And you have this El Gibor, this warrior God who fights for you and who protects you. Well, I hope this has added value to your spiritual growth. Again, let me ask you to like and share this video, and definitely leave a comment. I do these videos once a week. Every Tuesday is when I do these videos. I might change that rhythm up a little bit, but you can check my Facebook page, check my wall, and you'll see different videos that go back a couple of years actually, and all of those are intended to add value to your spiritual growth. Again, give this a like and a share. Definitely leave a comment. I hope you have a great day. God bless.